Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are going deep, really deep, into some highly sensitive source material. It's an interview transcript detailing an alleged plot the source calls the Anglo-Saxon Mission.
That's right. And our main source here is a first-hand account. This comes from a former UK military officer, also an insider in the City of London, who says he was at a secret meeting back in June 2005.
So this isn't just theory.
No, not at all. He claims he was in the room. Our mission today is to map out the shocking timeline they apparently discussed and be
Yeah.
really clear about what he says he heard directly versus his own analysis.
Okay, so let's start with the who. Who is supposedly orchestrating all this? The witness calls them a band of brothers or even a super government.
Yeah, and this is critical. He's not talking about some vague, shadowy cabal. He describes a very specific group, high-ranking UK Masons, some serious aristocratic figures, and key people from conservative politics, the military, and the police.
So what holds them all together?
He says the Masonic structure is the key. It's the vehicle. It functions as a shield, really, a secure way for them to meet and coordinate that's basically untraceable.
It gives them a loyalty structure outside of the official government.
Exactly. It formalizes their allegiance to, well, to something else. He also mentioned the Church of England is, and this is a quote, totally complicit, providing a sort of historical and social cover for it all.
That is a chilling foundation. So this meeting he was in, this action group, was this the top of the pyramid?
No, not even close.
Mm.
And he says you realize that very quickly. This wasn't the group deciding on the grand strategy.
They were just implementers.
Precisely. An action group.
Yeah.
They were there to discuss the rollout, the logistics of plans that had already been decided on at a much higher level he knew nothing about.
And what was the feeling in the room? What was their attitude towards these massive, world-changing plans they were discussing?
He described them as just cold, highly arrogant, totally calculating. He said they radiated this extreme power, but with zero compassion, no empathy.
It's just a management meeting?
A management meeting for the end of the world. They demand obedience, he said, and use fear to control things.
Okay, that brings us to the first phase discussed in that 2005 meeting. The first step was apparently already underway.
Yes, the centralization of financial power. And when you think about it, what happened just a few years later?
The 2008 financial collapse.
Exactly. In 2005, he says they were already talking about how the next crash would be engineered to consolidate wealth and power into the hands of the big Western powers, the US, UK, France, and Germany.
So the crash wasn't an accident. It was a strategic move, a way to seize resources before the main event.
It was a preparatory step.
Yeah.
They needed to fortify their own economic base
Right.
so that when the real geopolitical shock came later, they would be the ones left holding all the cards.
Fascinating. So the financial base is secured, but they knew their plans would cause chaos. So they were also prepping for massive unrest at home, right?
Absolutely. That was the second major prep step. They had to ensure complete domestic control before they could trigger the external war. And the witness pointed to one specific law in the UK.
The Private Security Industry Act of 2001.
That's the one. Sounds boring, but he says it was the legal tool they used to build a massive internal security force totally outside the normal military chain of command.
How massive are
About 500,000 people.
Wait, 500,000.
500,000. He stressed that this is far, far larger than the actual UK military at the time.
And what were these people trained for?
For a national emergency, for managing civil unrest, enforcing curfews, securing assets, and under emergency laws, these civil authority agents can be given powers of arrest and detention.
So basically building the infrastructure for market and all.
That's it. He said it was modeled on systems already in place in the US and Europe, a coordinated effort to get the home front locked down before the first shot was even fired.
So, with financial and domestic control in place, the board is set. This brings us to the war script itself. What was the trigger they were focused on back in 2005?
The ignition point was the Middle East. He said the group's main concern at that meeting was that Israel was reluctant to provoke Iran into a fight.
They needed Israel to attack Iran. That was the first domino.
It had to be. But the goal wasn't just a conventional war. The goal was to provoke either Iran or China into using a nuclear weapon first.
That's the key. They needed that nuclear justification for what came next.
Exactly. And the whole plan was based on an assumption, a belief from his military intelligence.
That Iran wasn't just trying to get nukes.
Right. The assumption was that Iran already had tactical nuclear capability, probably supplied covertly by China and disguised in other missile technology packages.
Which makes that planned provocation incredibly dangerous. They were counting on an almost immediate escalation.
Yes, from a conventional attack to a limited nuclear exchange in the Middle East, they expected it to just ruin huge areas. Israel, Syria, Lebanon, Iran. They were targeting cities, power grids,
Millions dead very quickly.
instant global shock and chaos. But the most important part of their plan wasn't the war itself. It was the pause,
The ceasefire.
a quick ceasefire, timed perfectly to happen before it could spiral into a full-blown world war, but after the maximum amount of panic and fear had been created globally.
So the war creates the fear, and the fear creates the justification.
You've got it. That atmosphere of pure terror is what they need to then install totalitarian, military-led governments in the West. Your elected officials become irrelevant overnight in the name of security.
And that move to totalitarian control, that sets the stage for the darkest part of this whole plan, the population reduction. What happens during that panicked ceasefire?
This is where it moves into genocide. While the world is paralyzed, the plan is to covertly deploy biological weapons, specifically against the Chinese population.
And the phrase he heard in that meeting is something I don't think I'll ever forget.
It's horrifying. He said it was delivered with no emotion at all, just China will catch a cold.
China will catch a cold. And they weren't talking about a normal virus, were they?
No. He described it as a flu-like virus that is genetically targeted, designed to exploit racial differences in DNA to spread like wildfire through that specific population, an explicitly race-based bioweapon.
To extinguish them, as the source put it. And what was the overall target for global population reduction?
He was very clear on this. He said he heard the number 50% stated out loud. Half the world's population.
My God.
And that number comes from a combination of things, the bioweapon, plus the famine and infrastructure collapse from the initial nuclear exchange. They see the current population as simply unmanageable.
There was another strange detail in there, wasn't there? Something about Russia.
Yes, it was an odd point he couldn't fully explain. The plan somehow involved forcing the Chinese military, even while they're being hit by a plague, to attack eastern Russia. Maybe to extend the ceasefire lines, create a bigger buffer zone. It's unclear.
So the full sequence is it's beyond belief. Financial collapse, limited nuclear war, a fake peace, a biological attack. And then what?
Then comes the real Third World War. A final, much larger nuclear exchange to finish the job and get to that 50% reduction target.
It's a script for pure horror, which brings us to the biggest question of all. Why? Why go to all this trouble if, as some theories suggest, there's some other global cataclysm coming anyway? Why the rush?
And this, he said, was the final piece of the puzzle for him, the aha moment. They aren't just plotting a war for the sake of war. They are in a race against a natural catastrophe.
A geophysical event.
Yes, something like a pole shift, a cyclical event that repeats every 11,500 years or so. They expect it to happen within the next decade or two.
So the war is preparation.
It's the ultimate prep. The logic is terrifyingly simple. You use the war to set up your fortified totalitarian control structure before the natural disaster hits.
Yeah.
That way, your chosen group, your base of power, is the one that survives intact.
Which gives a whole new and much more sinister meaning to the name, the Anglo-Saxon Mission.
It's the core of it, according to the source. It's an agenda of white racial supremacy. The whole point is to eliminate China as a rival and make sure the Western Anglo-Saxon nations are the ones left to rebuild and inherit the new Earth after the cataclysm.
The New World Order isn't a metaphor. It's a literal plan for the world after this disaster.
That's how he sees it. And the sheer arrogance of that, the cold, long-term planning, is why he believes the ultimate architects aren't even human.
He connects it to theories of non-human intelligence.
He does. He argues that only a massively powerful, extremely logical, and completely unempathetic force, what some might call ETs or reptilians, could be behind a plan this vast and this cold.
Okay, let's pause and absorb that. We have a detailed timeline for financial collapse, war, genocide, and totalitarian control, all designed to position one specific group to survive a natural catastrophe. It's almost too much to process.
It is. But, and this is so important, the source also offered a powerful counter-narrative, a note of hope. He was adamant that this plan is not inevitable.
Why not?
He said the controllers are desperate, they're running out of time, and the reason is because of what he calls a massive expansion of consciousness happening all over the planet. They're racing against us waking up.
So if their plan relies on fear and obedience, what's the countermove? What is the resistance?
It's surprisingly simple. Nonviolence. He said their entire military totalitarian plan fails if people just withdraw their consent. His advice was blunt. Stop working for them.
Just unplug from the system.
By consciously taking your energy, your work, your focus out of their systems, you render their cold logic powerless. The collective power of people choosing differently is the one thing they can't model or control.
And the idea that our own consciousness is the ultimate wild card here, that's a powerful thought.
It is, and it's echoed in other material the interviewers referenced. The idea that there are benevolent forces that see time differently and know this control system will ultimately fail. If our consciousness really can manipulate reality, as some fringe science suggests, then their power only works as long as we agree to live in their fear-based story.
So if you accept that premise that your choice and your consent are the most powerful forces in this equation, the final thought is this. What small step could you take today to withdraw your energy from this fear-based timeline and align instead with a future where your consent is no longer negotiable? Because according to this source, that's the real front line.